Let me ask you something. Have you ever walked away from a conversation feeling completely drained? Like someone just sucked the energy right out of you? Maybe it was a colleague who constantly criticizes a family member who always plays the victim, or that one friend who never celebrates your wins, but never misses a chance to point out your flaws. We all know someone like this. And here's the hard truth. Toxic people are everywhere. They are in our workplaces, in our families, sometimes even in our closest circles. And if we're not careful, they can shape the way we see ourselves. But here's the good news. You are not powerless. You do not have to allow toxic people to define your worth or dictate your peace. Dealing with them isn't about fighting harder or pretending you don't care. It's about courage. It's about boundaries. It's about understanding that your energy is sacred and your mental health is non-negotiable. I want to start by sharing a story. Years ago, I was working with a team that had one incredibly talented person who was also incredibly toxic. You know the type, brilliant in their job, but impossible to collaborate with. They used sarcasm as a weapon, created tension in every meeting, and thrived on drama. The rest of the team was exhausted. They'd whisper in hallways, avoid eye contact, and dread going to work. Here's the lesson I learned. One toxic person can poison an entire culture if we let them. But the opposite is also true. One courageous person who sets healthy boundaries can shift the atmosphere for everyone. So let me be clear. Toxic people don't just show up in boardrooms. They show up at Thanksgiving dinner, in our group chats, even in our own homes. And when we don't deal with them wisely, we pay the price. We pay in sleepless nights, in self-doubt, and wasted energy trying to win their approval or avoid their criticism. But when we learn to deal with them in smart, courageous ways, we reclaim our peace. We stop reacting to their chaos and start living from a place of strength. Today, I'm going to share with you 5 clever ways to deal with toxic people. And I promise you, these aren't tricks. They're tools. Tools that come from years of research, from sitting with leaders, families, and individuals who've learned how to stand strong without losing compassion. Tools that will help you protect your energy, set boundaries with confidence, and most importantly, hold on to your authenticity, even when someone else is trying to tear it down. So if you've ever wondered, how do I stop this person from stealing my joy? How do I deal with them without becoming like them? Stay with me. Because what you're about to hear could change not only the way you deal with toxic people, but the way you deal with yourself. The very first way to deal with toxic people is to set boundaries, with love and with courage. Now, I know the word boundaries can make some of us uncomfortable. We often think boundaries mean building walls, shutting people out, or being harsh. But let me tell you something. I've learned through years of research, boundaries are not about keeping people out. They're about keeping ourselves safe. Boundaries are the distance at which I can love you and me at the same time. Think about that for a moment. How many times have you stayed silent just to keep the peace? How many times have you said yes when your whole body was screaming no? Every time we betray ourselves just to avoid conflict, we hand over a little piece of our peace, our joy, our self-worth. Toxic people thrive when we abandon ourselves. They feed on guilt, fear, and our silence. I remember speaking with a woman at one of my workshops. She said, Brene, I feel like I'm walking on eggshells around my sister. Every family gathering, I shrink. I try to say the right things, keep her happy, avoid setting her off. But it's exhausting. And I asked her, what would happen if you stopped managing her feelings and started managing your boundaries? Her eyes widened, because for the first time she realized she wasn't responsible for fixing her sister's mood. She was responsible for protecting her own peace. Here's the truth. Boundaries are an act of self-respect. And when we set them, we will feel guilt at first. We'll feel like we're letting someone down, like we're being selfish. But guilt is not the same as shame. Guilt says, I did something. Shame says, I am something. Toxic people will try to make you feel shame for setting limits. But boundaries are never about shame. They're about clarity. So what does this look like in real life? It could sound like, I'm not available for this conversation right now. I can't lend you money, but I love you. I want to have dinner with you, but I won't stay if you start yelling. Notice something? Boundaries don't have to be cruel. They don't have to be dramatic. They can be calm, clear, and firm. And here's the beautiful part: when we set boundaries, we don't just protect ourselves, we teach people how to treat us. We send the message that our time, our energy, our hearts are valuable. Toxic people may resist at first. They may push harder, guilt trip you, or call you selfish. But hold the line. Boundaries are like muscles. The more you use them, the stronger they get. And here's the gift. When we learn to set boundaries with courage and love, we stop reacting out of fear and start living out of authenticity. Because at the end of the day, courage is not about winning arguments. It's about being brave enough to say, "This is who I am. This is what I need. And I am worthy of protecting my peace." That is the first clever way to deal with toxic people. The second clever way to deal with toxic people is this: don't engage in the drama. Now, this sounds simple, but let me tell you, it's not. Because toxic people thrive on drama the way plants thrive on sunlight. Drama is their oxygen. They create it, stir it, and then they wait for you to step into it. And when you do, they've got you right where they want you, exhausted, defensive, and questioning yourself. Here's the problem. Many of us are wired to fix things. We hear someone attack us, and we defend ourselves. They start gossiping, and we jump in to prove them wrong. They throw accusations, and suddenly we're in the middle of an emotional tornado, spinning with them. But here's the truth I want you to remember. Not every battle deserves your energy. Not every invitation to chaos deserves an RSVP. Let me share a story. Years ago, I worked with a leader who was constantly surrounded by conflict. Every meeting turned into a blame game. People were choosing sides, whispering behind backs, and wasting hours in toxic arguments. When I asked her how she was handling it, she said, "I jump in every time. I can't just let them fight. I try to mediate, defend, explain." And I told her something I learned the hard way. You don't have to attend every argument you're invited to. You don't have to sit down at every table where drama is being served. Here's what happens when you stop engaging. You take away their power. Toxic people love reaction. They feed off your frustration, your explanations, your anger. But when you stay calm, when you don't bite, when you choose silence or a simple, clear response like "I hear you" or "That's your opinion," the fire starts to burn out, because fire needs fuel. If you don't give them fuel, their flames die down. Now, let me be real with you. This is hard. It's hard because silence feels uncomfortable. It feels like letting them win. But here's the reframe. Walking away is not losing. It's choosing. You're choosing peace over chaos. You're choosing to protect your mental health over proving a point. And let me tell you something. Peace is always the bigger win. Think about how much energy you've spent in your life trying to win battles with people who were never going to change their minds anyway. Think about the sleepless nights, the overthinking, the long texts you typed and deleted a dozen times. All of that energy could have been invested in building yourself, in your family, your dreams, your joy. So here's the challenge. The next time a toxic person comes at you with drama, pause, breathe, ask yourself, is this worth my peace? And if the answer is no, don't step in. Don't engage. You don't need to explain, defend, or convince. Because the truth is, people who are committed to misunderstanding you will never hear you anyway. And that is freedom. When you realize that your energy is better spent creating a life you love, not fighting battles you never needed to fight in the first place. That is the second clever way to deal with toxic people. Don't engage in the drama. The third clever way to deal with toxic people is to choose courage over comfort. Now, here's the thing. We are wired to avoid discomfort. We want to keep the peace, smooth things over, avoid rocking the boat. And when it comes to toxic people, that instinct is even stronger because it feels safer to just stay quiet, nod along, and hope they'll go away. But here's the truth. Silence doesn't protect us. It erodes us. Every time we choose comfort over courage, we betray ourselves just a little bit. Let me give you an example. I once worked with a woman who had a boss that constantly belittled her ideas in meetings. Every time she spoke up, he'd cut her off with sarcasm or dismiss her work. And every time she stayed quiet, she told herself, "It's not worth the fight. If I just keep my head down, maybe he'll stop." But he didn't stop. In fact, he got worse. And one day she told me, I don't even recognize myself anymore. I've lost my voice. That's the cost of choosing comfort. Here's what I told her and what I want to tell you. Courage doesn't mean you're not afraid. Courage means you show up even when you are afraid. It means you choose to speak the truth, even if your voice shakes. It means you risk discomfort today so you don't lose yourself tomorrow. So what does courage look like with toxic people? Sometimes it looks like saying that comment wasn't okay with me. Sometimes it looks like walking away when every part of you wants to stay and argue. Sometimes it's reporting a toxic boss to HR, or telling a family member, I won't be part of this conversation if it continues like this. None of that is comfortable. It's messy. It's awkward. Your heart will pound. Your palms will sweat. But on the other side of that discomfort is freedom. Because here's the paradox. When you choose courage, your world actually gets safer. Toxic people lose their grip on you because their power comes from your fear. When you stop giving them comfort as a trade for peace, they have nothing left to hold on to. And let me say this clearly. Choosing courage doesn't mean being cruel. It doesn't mean yelling or shaming. True courage is grounded in compassion for yourself and for others. But compassion without boundaries is just self-destruction. So the bravest thing you can do is stand firm, respectfully but firmly, in your truth. One of my favorite lines I've learned in this work is this: comfort is temporary, but courage lasts forever. That awkward moment of saying what needs to be said, it passes. But the self-respect you gain from choosing courage, that stays with you. So the next time you're faced with a toxic person and your body is screaming, just stay quiet. Don't make waves. Remember this: peace doesn't come from avoiding conflict. Peace comes from standing in your truth. And that takes courage. Choosing courage over comfort. That is the third clever way to deal with toxic people. The fourth clever way to deal with toxic people is to protect your energy. And let me tell you, this isn't just nice advice. This is survival. Your energy is your most valuable resource. It's the fuel that powers your relationships, your creativity, your work, your dreams. And here's the problem. Toxic people are master energy thieves. They drain us with their negativity, their criticism, their chaos. And if we're not careful, we spend so much energy managing them that we have nothing left for the people and the things that really matter. I'll never forget a conversation I had with a woman in one of my workshops. She said, Brene, I don't even recognize myself anymore. I used to be joyful, full of ideas. But after dealing with my partner's constant criticism for years, I feel exhausted all the time. And I looked at her and said, that's not who you are. It's what you've allowed someone else's energy to do to you. The truth is, we cannot live wholehearted lives if we are constantly giving our energy away to people who only take. So how do we protect our energy? The first step is awareness. Pay attention to how you feel after spending time with someone. Do you feel uplifted, inspired, seen, or do you feel drained, small, anxious? Your body tells you the truth, even when your mind tries to justify their behavior. Trust it. The second step is intentional choice. Protecting your energy doesn't always mean cutting someone out of your life completely, though sometimes it does. It can also mean limiting the time you spend with them, choosing when and where you interact, or setting clear limits on what topics are off limits. For example, you might say, I can only talk for 10 minutes today, or I'm not going to discuss politics with you anymore. Those choices may feel small, but they are powerful acts of self-preservation. And here's something important. Protecting your energy is not selfish, it's sacred. Because when you conserve your energy, you have more to give to the people who deserve it. The ones who love you, encourage you, and see your worth. You show up as a better parent, a better friend, a better leader. Self-care isn't about bubble baths and candles. It's about making sure you don't let toxic people drain the very life out of you. One of the hardest lessons I've had to learn is this: not everyone deserves access to you. Your time, your presence, your energy, it's precious, and it should be invested wisely. If someone constantly drains you, it's okay to step back. You don't owe anyone unlimited access to your heart or your mind. So the next time you walk away from an interaction feeling like you've run a marathon you never signed up for, remember this: your energy is your responsibility. Guard it like the treasure it is. Protect it fiercely, not just for yourself, but for the people who need the best of you. That is the fourth clever way to deal with toxic people. Protect your energy. The fifth and final clever way to deal with toxic people is this: walk away when needed. And I know just hearing those words might feel heavy. Walking away is one of the hardest things we can do because it feels like giving up or like we failed. But let me tell you, sometimes the bravest, healthiest, and most self-respecting choice you can make is to leave. We live in a culture that tells us to stick it out, to be loyal, to just keep trying. And yes, perseverance is a beautiful thing in many areas of life, but perseverance with toxic people often becomes self-betrayal. There comes a point where staying costs you too much: your peace, your joy, your sense of self. And no relationship, no job, no friendship is worth losing yourself over. I remember working with a man who had been in a business partnership for nearly a decade. At first, it was exciting. They built something from nothing. But over the years, his partner became manipulative, dishonest, and controlling. He told himself for years, "I can make this work. I just need to try harder." But the harder he tried, the smaller he became. One day he told me, "Brene, I finally realized I was working harder to save the relationship than he was working to respect it." That's when he chose to walk away. And guess what? Within months, he rediscovered his creativity, his health improved, and he said, "I feel like I got my life back." Walking away doesn't mean you don't care. It doesn't mean you didn't love or that you failed. Walking away means you've chosen to care for yourself enough to say, "This is no longer healthy for me." It's an act of courage, not defeat. So how do you know when it's time to walk away? Listen to your body. If every interaction leaves you feeling smaller, anxious, or unsafe, that's a signal. Pay attention to the pattern, not the promises. Toxic people are often great at apologizing, at convincing you to stay, at promising they'll change. But real change shows up in behavior, not just words. If the pattern stays the same, it may be time to let go. And here's something I want you to remember. Walking away isn't about slamming doors or burning bridges. Sometimes it's quiet. Sometimes it's simply stepping back, reducing contact, or ending the chapter with as much grace as you can muster. But it's still walking away, and it's still powerful. The truth is, we only get one life, and it's too short to spend it shrinking for someone else's comfort. Choosing to walk away from toxicity means choosing to walk toward your peace, your wholeness, and your future. So if you're standing in that hard place right now, wondering if it's time to let go, hear me clearly. You are not weak for leaving. You are strong for valuing yourself. Sometimes the most loving thing you can do for yourself and for others is to walk away. So here we are. We've talked about 5 clever ways to deal with toxic people: setting clear boundaries, refusing to engage in the drama, choosing courage over comfort, protecting your energy, and when necessary, walking away. And as we close, I want you to really let this sink in. Every single one of these choices is an act of self-respect. Because here's the truth: toxic people don't destroy our lives. What destroys us is the story we tell ourselves that we don't deserve better, that we can't say no, that our worth is tied to how much we can endure. But you are not here to endure toxicity. You are here to live a wholehearted life, a life filled with love, creativity, connection, and courage. And that means you must be willing to protect your peace like it's sacred, because it is. I often say that vulnerability is not weakness, it's courage. And dealing with toxic people will ask for your deepest vulnerability. It will ask you to admit that you can't change them, that you can't save them, and that the only thing you can truly manage is yourself. That is hard, but it's also freeing. Imagine what your life could look like if you stopped pouring energy into people who only drain you. Imagine what it would feel like to wake up with joy because you chose courage over comfort. Imagine the kind of relationships you could build if you invested in people who celebrate your worth instead of questioning it. That's what happens when you take back your power. And let me leave you with this: boundaries are not walls, they are doors. Every time you set one, every time you protect your energy, every time you walk away from what no longer serves you, you are not closing yourself off. You are opening the door to a life where you get to be fully yourself. You don't need to fight toxic people. You don't need to prove yourself to them. You don't need their approval. What you need is the courage to stand firm in your worth and the clarity to know that your life, your joy, and your peace are too important to hand over to anyone else. So today, I invite you to make this promise to yourself: I will no longer trade my peace for someone else's comfort. I will no longer betray myself to keep the toxic people in my life happy. I will choose courage. I will choose boundaries. I will choose me, because the most courageous decision you will ever make is to stop letting toxic people write your story and to start writing it yourself.